Much of what I'm teaching comes from my own direct experience as a human being and as a person on the path. The path really began when I was 13 years old, and I was going through a classic dark night of the soul, which was viewed mostly as a depression experience, for which I was hospitalized. I spent, I can't remember, I think it was about a couple of months in an adult psychiatric unit, which was a pretty interesting episode because myself, I was very withdrawn and really couldn't see much of a reason to live. I was very disconnected from myself, from what I needed, from what made sense to me. And at the same time, I was in an environment where everyone around me was suffering from the same malaise. That pushed me even further into questioning, what is this? What is this life? And how do we live? How can I live in a way that felt doable? And at the darkest moment, I really, really wanted to die. Never tried to take my life, but I remember starting to pray to a God I didn't know I believed in. Dear God, please let me die. Now, I don't come from a religious family, so why I would pray like that, I don't know, but I meant it. And I reached a point of exhaustion in that despair that I think a spontaneous surrender happened. And when it happened, it was like this cracking open into a dimension of reality that was boundless love. And in that reality, everything that I had been so disconnected from, that I'd so needed, that hadn't been able to be articulated, was, awakening from within my own being. And within that direct experience was understanding of love as the nature, the fundamental ground of everything, the fundamental depth of who I am and who you are, who everything and everyone is. And it's this river of grace that exists underneath the appearances of life. And that the purpose in life was to find a way to live that. From that moment onwards, I was passionately interested to understand more about how can we live from this depth of being. So that set me on the path of study and practice, and I studied and practiced in plural traditions, many teachings, many teachers, many methods. This led me into seminary training, and by the age of 26 I was ordained, so my teaching formally began then. Shortly afterwards, I was asked to create Europe's first interfaith seminary, which was groundbreaking at the time, as nothing like that had existed in the UK before. For 10 years I crafted a program of spiritual transformation based on the practices at the heart of the world's great wisdom traditions. For me, this was a wonderful, intense period of growth and service, during which I trained and ordained over 700 people. And then at the age of 36, I found myself on one of many pilgrimages to India. This time it was to a sacred mountain called Arunachala. And this mountain is regarded as the home of Shiva, the embodiment of Shiva, and had been home to many great saints. It was full of spiritual history. But it was particularly home to someone called Ramana Maharshi, who was a great saint, died in 1950. And one day I was meditating in Ramana Maharshi's cave, not expecting or desiring anything special to happen, just meditating, showing up, giving pilgrimage and honoring this great being. The cave was filled with a depth of silence that was deeper than noise or the absence of noise. And something took place within me that I had read about at that time, but had not really fully tasted until then. And it was an experience of the mind completely becoming quiet, of opening into a dimension of reality that was beyond self, beyond God, beyond any concept at all. And in that there was a kind of a teaching. It was like a Zen koan, like a bell sounding inside. Felt to me like the transmission of Ramana. And it said, be nothing, do nothing, get nothing, become nothing, seek for nothing, relinquish nothing, be as you are, rest in God. And with that came a depth of residing, quiet, absolute peace, absolute stopping of all of the ego engines. And I was just in this state of profound beingness. The state lasted for a few weeks, and like all states, states come and go. So when the state came to its conclusion, it was as though I was being pushed as a square peg through a round hole, with a knowledge then, now this needs to be integrated. And so the period after that was a period of disassembling, which is a big part of what happens to us often as we have big spiritual openings. A lot of the structures of our life get rumbled, get taken apart, because they can't support the new awareness to land. So within 6 months, my life had completely changed without me trying to change it. And I found myself having to really deepen and contemplate and inquire, what did this really mean to be nothing, do nothing, get nothing, become nothing, etc. And I realized all of my life there was a someone trying to get something, trying to become someone valuable, good enough, spiritually successful, worldly successful. There are all these identifications that were hiding, were obscuring the natural radiance of what lives us, and that these wanted to dissolve. So I started to see that the process was to allow the natural unfolding, disassembling, opening, movement, to enter into the unknown and find deeper ground in a very real way. And then there was a period of reassembling, of letting that be integrated back into functioning, relationship, personalness, daily life. And I learned so much from that journey, and also reading and studying, as I had for years, the spiritual biographies of great beings, and that this is part of what we go through. We are asked to go through periods of letting go, surrender. It's just that we can't do the surrender. It does us when the moment is right. And yet the process can be a lot more graceful if we have some understanding and if we have some navigation from someone who knows the way. I'm extending a perennial invitation that's really at the bottom line of all spiritual traditions, particularly the non-dual traditions. And that is the invitation to be still. To be still is more than just not speaking, more than just sitting in silent meditation. It's an invitation to truly let the egoic mechanisms, the strategies and the habits of the mind that interfere with the natural being of who we are, shining and living and embodying ourselves. It's to learn to relax those mechanisms, and then stillness just is. Being shines.